We have been talking about the Southeast Asian philosophies during all the past episodes. We have talked about several Southeast Asian philosophies, including ancient Chinese philosophies, ancient Indian philosophies, ancient Japanese philosophies. Now it is the time to talk about ancient Vietnamese and Korean philosophies. These two philosophies are very important because it is related with the Zen Buddhism. But despite there have been several upheavals with the schools of thoughts of Confucianism and Taoism, the Zen Buddhist thoughts were prevalent in Vietnam and Korea during the ancient times. One of the important ancient Vietnam and Korean philosophy is related with Zen Buddhism in Japan. Zen Buddhism in Japan actually arrived from ancient China as the Chinese Chan or Chang Song schools of Buddhist meditation thoughts. The term of Zen in Japan language is derived from the term of Chan in Chinese language, because I have already said that Chan or Chang Song Buddhist meditational school was very prevalent during the Tang Dynasty period in Middle East China, and which was later became very prevalent in Japan as Zen Buddhism. And Zen Buddhism was the primary Buddhist thoughts which influenced later on in ancient Vietnam and Korea, particularly the south parts of the Vietnam and Korea, North Korea as well. This Chinese Chan spread to Vietnam, particularly towards the south parts of the Vietnam in ancient times, and became the Vietnamese Tian religion, Tian Buddhism. Tian is the modification of Zen Buddhism in Japan. While it was Zen in Japan, it was Tian in Vietnam. Meanwhile, the Chinese Chan or Japanese Zen was spreading in North Korea as well, particularly towards the northeast parts of the Korea, and became known as the Sion Buddhism. There have been also spreading Confucianism, Taoism as well, but the Chinese Chan Buddhism or Zen Buddhism in Japan became very important and became as Sion Buddhism in Korea, particularly towards the northeast parts of the Korea. Zen is a form of Mahayana Buddhism in Japan. This Mahayana Buddhism was depending on the Chan schools of thoughts in ancient China during the Tang Dynasty period. Zen is a form of Mahayana Buddhism, and it is grounded on the schema of the incarnation of Bodhisattva and his holy path. Bodhisattva was the incarnation of Lord Buddha, and his holy path was the basis of Zen Buddhism. It is aspect of the Mahayana form of Buddhism. This Bodhisattva schema was later widely used to list out six important virtues. These six important virtues are generosity, moral training, patient endurance, energy or exerting efforts, meditation or wisdom. Meditation and wisdom. These are the six virtues of the Bodhisattva schema, which means Bodhisattva schema actually means that Bodhisattva was to carry out a schema, and his percepts, his visions. The Chinese Chan school of thought was introduced in Vietnam during the early Chinese occupation periods. China invaded Vietnam during 101 BC, and it was continued later on, a prolonged period, towards 937 AD as well. Before the Christ era, 100 BC toward 937 period of AD or the Christ era. A long period of occupation, Chinese occupation in Japan, in Vietnam occurred. And during these periods, the Chinese monks and other Korean religious scholars communicated with each other and they exchanged their ideas, their cultural traditions, etc., etc. And thereby, they were largely influenced by the Chinese schools of thought, so Buddhism. And in Korea, it evolved and became as Tian Buddhism, the Tian philosophy of Buddhism, which was widely propagated during the Lei dynasty and the Tran dynasty period in Vietnam, respectively in Vietnam. Lai dynasty and Tran dynasty periods in Vietnam, respectively. The Vietnamese true land bamboo schools of thoughts that modified the Tian philosophy with Confucianism and Taoist doctrines. The Linchi schools of thoughts was later brought across Vietnam as Lam Tay schools of thought with a new native tradition and influencing all the elite and royal court in Vietnam. It became also very prevalent in royal court and among the Vietnamese people. Thereafter, Lam Tay became the largest monastic order across the country in Vietnam. Meanwhile, Buddhist schools of thoughts were spreading in Korea as well, as Seon Buddhism. Seon Buddhism emerged during the Silla dynasty period, probably during the 7th and 9th centuries. The initial Seon schools of Chan Buddhism were known as the 9 mountain schools or the Busan schools of thoughts. The Japanese occupation of Korea brought in numerous modernist ideas and changed the Korean Seon schools of thoughts. Thereafter, the Korean monks began to practice marrying and enjoying conjugal life and maintaining families like the Japanese practices adopted by the monks. Today, there are two important Seon schools of thoughts in Korea. They are Jogye schools of thoughts and Taegyo schools of thoughts, two different orders of Seon Buddhism in Korea. The largest Seon schools is Jogye schools of thought, which enforces strict celibacy to monks, while the Taegyo schools allows monks to marry and enjoy conjugal life and maintain families. These are the ancient Vietnamese and Korean philosophies. Now we can talk about other important philosophies across the world, particularly during the Middle East, ancient Middle East periods, the Mesopotamian civilization, Egyptian civilization, and the European, particularly the Byzantine, Hellenic ages, and their schools of thoughts and philosophies, ancient times, during the ancient times. And we can very enthusiastically talk about it in the coming episodes. Now let me stop this episode.